we're a small but select band. I'm always a big fan of sort of personalised concerts and things like that. So welcome. I can name you all by name almost, but I won't. Croeso I bawb, croeso yn enwedig I Harriet, wrth gwrs. Mor falch, mae mwy o bobl yn dod sy'n wych. So just tra ni'n siarad, nawn ni dweud gair tipyn bach am Harriet. Just to say this is our sort of bit of an evening entertainment. I did mean to get dressed up a bit more, something a bit more glittery, but it's too cold in here to do it. So we've got the lights instead, just to give it a bit of atmosphere. Tonight we've got Harriet Earis with us. I'm so pleased. She's an internationally renowned harpist based in an off-grid farmhouse near Aberystwyth. She specialises in the smaller Celtic harp. She's performed all over Europe and in over 25 states of the US, pioneering a new approach to the harp as a strong, lively melody instrument. And I did tweet that dancing shoes might be needed this evening. As part of the Young Voices tour, she performed solo in the Royal Albert Hall and the O2 Arena in London. And over the years, she has given hundreds of recitals in community settings, theatres, major festivals around the UK, and now for us. Thank you. She was winner of the open stage competition at the Celtic Connections Festival in Glasgow, chosen from 82 acts competing for the title. She's many recordings to her credit. I meant to get some out to wave, sorry, CDs. Not that I'm a fan or anything. And Radio Wales presenter Frank Hennessy, you know, he is a wise man, said of her latest album with her trio of harp, bass and drums that it made him feel so good it should be available on the NHS. So I'm not going to argue with that. Harriet isn't on her own this evening. Well, she is at the moment, but in a quarter of an hour or so, we'll be joined by Tom Bullough, but so as not to sort of interrupt proceedings, I'll just tell you a bit about Tom, even though he's not here to hear it. Tom Bullough is the author of 4 novels, most recently Adlaniant, a story of 70 years on a farm in mid Wales, which was received to great acclaim in the UK and the US, and among other plaudits was the subject of a sermon in Westminster Abbey. It's one worth hearing, I'm sure. At present, he is working on his 5th book, Sarn Helen, a study of Welsh history and the climate crisis, which will be published by Granta next year. Tom grew up on a Radnorshire hill farm and now has, well, somewhat deserted his noble Radnorshire roots and lives in the Brecon Beacons, but we'll forgive him when he turns up. So that's all from me. Over to Harriet. Diolch yn fawr, Harriet, am ddod. Pawb ar mute, yeah. So, croeso, Harriet.
Oh, diolch yn fawr iawn, diolch. Wel, mae'n hyfryd I fod yma, a diolch am ymuno ni heno. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's lovely to be here, and I really hope you're going to enjoy the music. Gobeithio byddwch chi'n mwynhau y gerddoriaeth heno. So, i'n mynd I ddechrau gyda darn o'r enw Clychau Caerdydd. This is a piece called The Bells of Cardiff. And hopefully you'll be able to hear the bells right at the beginning and particularly at the end as well of the piece. So listen out for that. So dyma Clychau Caerdydd. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much. Thank you. So that was Clychau Cardydd, and hopefully you could hear the bells in the last bit of that. So, i'n mynd I gario ymlaen gyda darn enwog iawn o Gymru. Mi'n siŵr bydd lot ohonych chi yn gyfarwydd ar dan yma. So it's a very famous tune from Wales. I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with it. And I first learnt this because I was playing in a pub in Brecon and somebody came up to me with a £5 note and they'd written the name of the piece on the £5 note, and they said, you can have this if you learn to play this on the harp. And enw'r dan oedd Myfanwy. So this is Myfanwy, and yeah, I've been playing it ever since. So this is probably one of the most beautiful, saddest love songs to come out of Wales, and yes, composed by Parry from Aberystwyth. So here's Myfanwy. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Diolch. So, something which I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with that melody. So, mynd I gadw llygad ar amser oherwydd fi'n gwybod bod Tom Bullough yn mynd I siarad am 10 munud I 8. So, mae dy fi 5 munud arall cyn iddo fe ddod. So, I'm just keeping it on the time because we're gonna I'm gonna hand over for a kind of interval to our wonderful guest Tom Bullough at 10:02. So I think I've probably got time to play you at least one more piece before then. keep an eye on the time, and then I'll be back again after Tom to play a few more tunes if you want to stick around at that point. I'm really looking forward to hearing Tom. Actually, I don't know anything about his writing, so I'm looking forward to that very much. And I was chatting to him yesterday, and it turns out that he lived in a house about 8 or 9 miles in that direction over the hills from me, so we were practically neighbours for a while. He was also up in the Cambria Mountains in the Elennydd here, which is I'm in the hills inland from Aberystwyth, near Pontrhydd way up in the mountains, one of the remotest houses around and completely off grid. And yeah, so and he was apparently as well, so yeah, I'm intrigued to hear more. Anyway, this kind of harp, some of you might not know, but it has levers on the top of the strings to change key. And sometimes you have to change rather a lot of them in the course of a piece. And yes, that's what I've got to do with this next one. It's a dyma darn o'r enw yr acrobat, appropriately called the acrobat. Mae'n ddarn sydd wedi cael ei cyfansoddi i'r ffidil. Mae'n ddarn o'r Alban yn yr eiddiol. It's a piece from Scotland by the fiddler James Scott Skinner. And I didn't see why the fiddle player should have all the best tunes, so I've stolen it and put it on the harp. So you'll see the levers in action during this one. Oh, diolch yn fawr iawn, thank you. Oh, 1 minute to go. I don't know if Tom has arrived yet. Is Tom on the scene? He has arrived. Oh, good. Wonderful. Well, I know that Tom has time constraints today, so maybe I will hand over to Tom to chat to us if he's here, and I'll look forward very much to hearing what he's got to say. So please welcome Tom Bullough.
Thank you, Harriet. As Harriet suggested just then, I did come into this in an evening of juggling things, and I now find myself almost hypnotized, and I was feeling sort of frenetic as I have to rush off somewhere in 20 minutes or something like this, and now I find myself feeling very mellow, and I'm probably going to operate far too slowly for what I had in mind to do. I've also somehow managed to fill the screen with my own face, which is very disconcerting, so let me just see if I can do something about that. Jane kindly asked me to come and just do a bit of reading, and as I think she mentioned, I have a book which is pretty well finished at the moment, which will appear next year, but which is I haven't yet come up with a succinct way of describing it, but I mean, it kind of concerns the history of Wales, particularly the 6th century, the Age of Saints, and the future under climate change. But Jane was asking for something uplifting. I'm not sure that I'm a particularly uplifting writer, but I had an idea of something that might just about serve the purpose for this evening. I mean, there is, so much to be concerned about at the moment, and even if you're reading, say, the advice of the CCC to the Welsh Government on achieving net zero by 2050, the scale of the challenge can seem overwhelming sometimes, and especially if, like me, your heart is you're very deeply invested in farming culture of Wales. And I have a child now coming up the stairs. Excuse me. I'm busy. Sorry. So I thought perhaps better to read a few pages from the beginning of this novel, Adlands. I suppose the point being that it can be easy to forget, perhaps when looking at the future, quite how much change we have experienced here in rural Wales over the past century or so. This is a novel which is set over 70 years on a hill farm in Radnorshire, not far from where I grew up. And as you'll know, I'm sure far better than I do, I mean, particularly that period succeeding the Second World War. So this is a novel which starts in 1941 with the birth of the central character and goes through to 2011. But those 30 years from 1940 to 1970, I mean, I know the historian John Davis referred to that as the as more having changed in that period of time than had changed since the 18th century. And I remember talking to Cliff Pugh at Botalag, not far from where you are, Harriet, as you may know the farm up on the Cymystwyth Road. And him saying, I mean, he would be in his 80s now, and him saying in a sort of wonder that he thought that surely more had changed in his life than could possibly have, than anyone else in preceding generations could ever really have experienced anywhere. So this novel is called Adlands. Adlands means headlands. Really, it's just as it were the kind of Radnorshire pronunciation of it. And as sort of headlands, Adlands are the last part of the field to be ploughed. So, in a sense, this farm is cast of fun and is cast as the last place to be visited by those changes, those technological and cultural changes, which were the experience of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. So I'm just going to read from the beginning of it, which hopefully means that it will require little experience, a little further explanation. 1941. By 4 o'clock, when Idris was devouring his tea, perched between the tall spoked wheels of the wheel car, the fence no longer straggled round Llanbedr Hill, but cut out almost to the heather. Its wires whistled in the searching wind. He appraised the bent grass, the sheep's fescue and deep red fern of his new claimed ground. He checked for rocks with his quick black eyes, then, tossing a scrap of cake to the dogs, lowered himself back onto his smarting feet, warming his hands inside his old tweed coat before he gripped the shafts of the ransom and manhandled it over to the working horse, which was tethered to the first post he had sunk. "Ow," he called, "ow, whoop, ow, whoop." Buster was a contrary animal. To catch him in the mornings took guile and diligence, hiding the harness, proffering bread, or threatening him with Albert's bicycle, which always filled him with a paralysing terror. But a horse was a horse, the highest of all animals, whatever the virtues of the sheepdog. Once Buster was hackled, he would nettle to his work, and although Idris held the joe lines and the handles of the plough, he guided him with his words alone, his voice shrill over the clatter of the tack. Short, round-shouldered, he toiled behind him up the shallow slope, one foot in the reen, the other in the crumpled fern. He watched the mountains emerge from the red-green hilltop, snow in the gullies of their long black body like a skeleton exposed. He paused at his former boundary with the common land to hurl a few stones out of the way, but in time he reached the Adlands by the green lane to Payne's Castle and lumped the plough round to face the wind, the valley, and the birds already diving and arguing on the scar he had left in the hillside. "That's him, Buster. That's a boy." On occasion, ploughing, Idris had counted 13 different species of bird in his field. Even now there were sea crows and starlings and lapwings and rooks from the trees at the church. How anybody could think this work was lonely was more than he could understand. And then there was the pleasure of the ploughing itself, of the line, of the furrow falling clean and firm so the seed would sit in the ridge. The war ag paid every farmer in the country for ploughing up grazing, for putting down crops, but others left grass between their furrows. Others still had refused to comply at all and found themselves thrown off their land. Compulsory war work, that was what it meant. Idris, he'd do his bit of usurping the common, same as the next man, but he found his defiance in precision, in a tidy job, and if his neighbours took it for acquiescence, well, there it was. The plough stopped dead in the black, peaty soil. It threw itself forward so that the handles kicked out hard as a bullock, and Idris caught such a blow to the chest that it was only by grabbing the plain wire fence that he was able to keep his feet. He gasped and choked on the airless wind. His long, pale face turned dark, almost scarlet. In the naked pain it was as if he'd been gassed, as if his lungs were blistering all over again. The sun was falling now, between Mynydd Troed and the faraway plume of the beacons. Beneath the colouring clouds, Idris stood propped against the nearest fence post, coughing, wheezing, wiping the tears from his face. There were ravens in the larches round the cottage at the island, weathers out for Llinamach Pool. The sunlight in places revealed old copse and reens, the work of the Deans, so his grandfather Idris had told him. It took all of the strength in his uninjured arm for Idris to push himself upright, then to hoist the plough handles level with his shoulders to allow the horse to pull it clear. The point of the share was snapped off clean. With his hand he tore at the rhizomes of the fern and peeled back the grass from a flat-faced stone, a foot in the width and some 6 inches deep, which he tried at first to lift himself. He tunnelled beneath it, throwing up earth, but even with his boot he could not work it loose. So he trudged across the bank to the wheel car, fetched the chain and bound it round the stone, looping the hook end back through the T-head on the plough. "Easy, boy," Idris murmured. "Easy now." He led the horse slowly down the slope, the ransom dragging uselessly as the long chain jangled along with the brasses, rose with the share and came tight. The birds lapped back down their single furrow. Buster snorted, shaking his head as if bothered by flies. The muscles showed in his thick white coat. He dug up the soil with one feathered hoof, and with another, and then, with a sucking of mud and a tearing of roots, the skin of the hill at last gave way. The stone reared into the evening light, a slab of darkness, cut, not formed, taller than Idris by a head or more, its long shadow lying coldly on the hilltop for a moment before it fell. At the table in the kitchen, the white jug fell from Etty's fingers to shatter on the flagstones, an ink spot of water in the last red light from the east-facing window. A moan broke unbidden from the back of her throat and grew into a lowing like a beast. Her long eyes clenched, her wide lips trembling, she sank until her face was almost in the basin and her nostrils flooded with the reek of yeast. Pain encircled her back and her belly like a noose. An urge came upon her simply to run, even in this sack of a dress, with nowhere to go and the night coming on, but her body held her as completely as the house. The clocks passed the time across the larder door. Somebody was hurrying down the boards of the landing. She looked again into the fist-shaped valleys and the lakes in the dough, which spilled and shimmered as she tried to stand. "Ma'am," Etty managed, then with growing panic, "Ma'am!" By the time that Idris had packed up his tools and lowered the long stone onto the wheel car, the first of the nightly searchlights was scouring the sky above the mountains in the south. It trailed through the cobweb clouds, pointed out Venus, found the first new moon of the new year high over the Tumpa, a dry moon, longer at the bottom than the top on account of its holding in the water. Idris removed his old felt hat, joined his hands, bowed to the moon, and made a wish. This done, he opened the gate he had hung that morning, and, with a second searchlight now sparring with the first, patrolling a land in which he could see not one fire, not one window or headlamp, he allowed Buster to make his way home. There's a long, long trail a-winding into the land of my dreams, where the nightingales are singing and the white moon beams. Bumping and slithering, the wheel car followed the track back down towards the farm, its iron snout digging up the wet ground, taking the weight from the half-seen horse. Idris sat on the head of the stone, his boots among the unused posts and wire, his bad arm tucked across his aching ribs. He sang along to the wind in the trees, the larches at the island, the hawthorns on the common, and the beeches on the bank above Llangaree, where the dogs were yawling into the darkness. He could have told any place in this valley simply by its sounds, by the movement of the air. There's a long, long night of waiting until my dreams all come true, till the day when I'll be going down that long, long trail with you. On the near side of the brook, he slipped to the ground and, with the moon and the searchlights appearing once more from the hill behind him, led the horse through the ford and into the bottom field. In the thin, shifting light, he saw the first signs of a glat in the hedge, a fresh mould hump, a ewe he'd known as Bessie as a lamb which was rubbing on a gatepost and would need to be checked for the scab. He passed the creatures gathered around the hay cratch and climbed towards the banky piece where the barn for the Funnon rose above him, loud with cattle, the wind on the roof and in the surrounding trees. The stable lamp flared, then sank into a glow as the stocking fell back over the flame. Idris had to lift it just to make out the rabbits hanging in braces, their big shadows stirring on the deep barn walls, the bantams roosting on the fat white beams. In the yard, the sheepdogs were wagging and whining for attention. The pig he had spared the previous month returned his look from the door of the sty, while the cattle in the beast house shouted their hunger, and the door of the stable swung and creaked, the cob gone out of his bay. "Drat that boy," Idris started. He stood for a moment in the stars, in the puddles, beneath the tall and blinded house, then, hawking, spitting, he went to fill a bucket in the stone-lined phlegm which ran along the top edge of the yard. He washed the feathering of Buster's legs, unhackled the ropes, and rose his supper of swedes and oat straw. He took the hay knife down from its peg, but at the first sound of a motorcycle he returned outside to peer down the lane at 3 lines of light which came blinking out of Turley Wood, throwing shapes like ghosts onto the trees and the hedgerows. "Good evening, Mr. Hamer," called the midwife, dismounting at the bridge. She stopped the spluttering engine and took her bite from the pannier. "What's news?" Well, Mrs. Prosser." Idris was looking some inches to her left. "Well, she were heavy on foot this morning." "You han't seen her then?" No, I've only come back but just." The midwife hesitated, perhaps out of pity. "Oh," she said, "there was a bomb fell at Bochrud last night. Did you hear?" "Oh," he said. "Well, aiming for the railway bridge, they reckoned. Made a heck of a hole in the Daru." "Oh," Idris repeated, as if this woman were a stranger, as if they had not sat within 10 yards of one another every Sunday for the past 20 years. He turned his eyes another inch into the darkness and held up the lamp to light the old wooden bridge that led across the phlegm to the house. "I had best fodder the beasts, I had. Please to go on in, Mrs. Prosser." That's probably long enough for an interval. I hope that if it wasn't uplifting, it was enough to take your mind out of the present moment and into a related but sufficiently remote one. I'll hand you back to Harriet with many thanks for listening, and just many thanks as well for what you're doing for helping to create the sustainable future that we so dearly need. Many thanks. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Oh, diolch yn fawr iawn, Tom. That was fantastic. I think we should all unmute and give him a clap, don't you? So, yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, that certainly took me right out of the moment and back into the past here in this valley. I can picture a lot of things from what you were describing. A lot of it was very, very similar to where I am here. I'm in such a remote valley here, and you can probably see behind me a very old farmhouse, and I could picture so much of what you're saying. Got the old barns outside with the old plough equipment in there, and yeah, all rusting now, but I could, it was lovely. You brought it to life for me there, so thank you, Tom. That was, and
yeah,
I was
lovely. Many thanks to you. And I do apologise that I have to rush off, but I actually need to go to the very place I just described, Bochrud, now. So I'm going to have to leave you, but many thanks indeed for your attention, and best of luck with the rest of it.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr. Oh, that was great. And yeah, I was thinking that just as Tom's writing is inspired by this rural landscape he is, that's definitely the inspiration for my music as well. So yeah, it's sort of like two different kinds of art that have come out of the same landscape here. So I'm going to start with one of my compositions this time in this half of the concert. So we wedi cyfansoddi dan yma rhai blynyddoedd yn ôl. Ac enw'r dan yw Nawr ac yn y Man. Ni wedi bod yn clywed am hanes Cymru fyna, ond fi'n gobeithio dod â chi yn ôl i'r amser presennol nawr. I'm hopefully bringing you back into the present moment now. We've just been hearing about some Welsh history there. And this piece is called Here and Now. And it's just my way of getting myself into the moment. I think in this very strange time we've all been living through the last couple of years, it's felt more important than ever to just be able to not worry about the future, not dwell too much on anything, and just be here and now in this moment, which is the only moment we have, and it's lovely to be here sharing it with all of you. So this is my piece Here and Now, and it's going into some traditional tunes, some Irish tunes. The first one is the Low Highland. That's not a contradiction in terms. A Highland is a type of tune a bit like a strathspey from the north of Ireland, from Donegal. And the final tune has the great name of The Rat in the Thatch. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr. So that was the rat at the end, the rat in the thatch. so yeah, a few traditional tunes from Ireland there. Well, this combination that you're having this evening of poems and writing and literature and music has been the age-old combination right the way back to medieval Wales. And traditionally, this is how people in a medieval hall in Wales would have entertained themselves. You'd have had your storyteller and you'd have had your harp player. And the harp players would have been playing on a small harp, a little bit like this one. And I'm going to shift over to that harp now and play you some of the oldest written harp music in the world. I thought I'd just show you what it looks like on the page. It's written down, this music, and it goes right back to the 12th century. It was written down in the 16th by someone called Robert ap Hugh, but he copied a much older manuscript. And the original manuscript comes from Ynys Môn, from Anglesey, and it was from a convention that was held by the King Gruffydd ap Cynan of Gwynedd. And he invited Irish harp players and Welsh harp players to come together and to record all the oldest tunes they knew. And they wrote it down in a really strange notation. I'll show you what it looks like. Hang on. So I don't know if you can see there. These are some pages from the manuscript. So it's all written in this strange kind of tablature with sorry, you probably can't hear me. So it's got instructions in medieval Welsh, and I did my degree in medieval Welsh. And so I thought, as a harpist and somebody with a degree in medieval Welsh, I really should make this manuscript part of my life, really. And one of the things I've been doing during lockdown is I've been having some lessons from Bill Taylor, who's a real expert on the manuscript, and learning how to read that. So I thought I'd play you just a couple of sections of one piece. It's a religious piece called Caniad San Cilin, the Song of St. Cilin. And it goes back to the 12th century. So this is the oldest written harp music in the world, and we're very proud of the fact that it comes from Wales. So I'm going to shift onto this little harp for this one. So you can just imagine yourselves back in a medieval hall for a moment. We've got the fire behind me, and this is the kind of thing you'd have been listening to. Thank you very much. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Diolch. Rwy'n mynd I symud yn ôl i'r Delen Fawr nawr. Thank you very much. So that is literally the oldest harp music in the world. Sometimes when I ask people where they think the oldest harp music in the world comes from, they'll say Egypt or Greece or China or something. And in fact, it didn't. It came from the northwest of Wales. So that's you can. The original manuscript is actually in the British Library now, and yeah, I'd love to go and see it one day, but I've just got the facsimile copy there. So I'm going to update the music a little bit from now on. I'm trying to give you a selection of all the different things that the harp can do, really, and that I do on this kind of smaller harp. I learned classical harp originally for about 10 years. I played a big pedal harp. I've got one in the corner over there, just out of sight of the camera, and now I really specialise in this. I started playing with an Irish band in London, and that got me into Irish music, and then I was doing my degree in medieval Celtic studies, and I moved to Wales around that time, and wanted to play the music of this landscape, and something that felt that it had come from this landscape. So I'll gradually update the music towards the end of the concert. So we'll go forwards a good few centuries now and go to the 18th century. And this is a piece that was written for the Welsh triple harp. It was actually written by this man here. I don't know how well you can see things if I hold them to the screen. This is Blind John Parry, and he was played a triple harp with 3 rows of strings, and you can listen out for some of the triple harp effects. I'm trying to imitate them on this kind of harp. On a triple harp, you have 2 outer rows that do exactly the same notes, and you can get lovely doubling effects. So I'm trying to imitate that in one of the variations. So listen out for that. And this is a tune called Pant Corlan Ruin. It's a Welsh clog dancing tune, the Valley of the Sheepfold for the Lambs, Pant Corlan Ruin. There we go. That was the Pant Corlan Ruin, the Valley of the Sheepfold for the Lambs. So quite a well-known clog dancing tune, that one. And I was remembering as I played it, this house that I'm in now, it was a holiday house for us when we were little. It's been in the family since 1981, and I've crawled around this house as a baby. And I remember when I was just learning the harp, I'd learnt that set of tunes off the Welsh harpist Robin Hugh Bowen in Aberystwyth, and I remember the farmer here, Hugh Owen, came in to listen to me play the harp, and that was the piece that he recognised. He said, "Oh yeah, I know that one." And yeah, I was remembering sitting here with him standing in the doorway playing that. Gosh, I don't know how many years ago. It must have been probably in about 1991, something like that. So yeah, it suddenly came back as I was playing that there. So yeah, I feel like a lot of these tunes very much have grown out of this landscape, and they suit the house and the valley, and that's why it's quite nice. I know Zoom concerts aren't the same as concerts in real life, but it is rather special to be able to invite you into my home and into the setting that has inspired me to want to spend my life playing this kind of music. So you're very welcome here, and it's lovely to be able to invite you in to listen to the music in the place that is most special to me. So let me, we've probably got time for maybe, might just fit in 2 pieces very quickly, I think. What I'd like to do is leave a couple of minutes at the end for some questions. So if any of you have got any questions about the music I've been playing, unrhyw cwestiynau dych chi, bydde fe'n hyfryd i siarad â rhai ohonoch chi. Fi'n gwybod bod yn grŵp eitha fach heno, ac bydde fe'n nice i dod i nabod chi ychydig bach cyn y diwedd, so it'd be lovely to get to know you a little bit before the end, because it's such a small group tonight. So maybe if any of you do have questions and you want to unmute and just ask me a few things at the end of the concert, then you can have a think now if there's anything you'd like to know. But I'll play you a couple of tunes, a Scottish tune and a tune that's come from Nova Scotia. And the first one is called Carney's Canter. It's a tune about a pony called Carney. Again, it's a 19th century Scottish tune, fiddle tune. And I do a lot of horse riding, so I wanted to play a tune that was called a canter. And then the last tune is Earl Mitton's Breakdown. And a breakdown is a type of tune a bit like a reel that you get in Canada. So, and Earl Mitton was a fiddler in the 1950s. He had a band called the Valley Rhythm Boys. And the very first track on my album featured these 2 tunes. My first track on my first album back in 2001. So I've been playing this set for a while, and it's one of my favourites. So this is, again, you'll see some lever action with this one. So Carney's Canter and Mitton's Breakdown. Thank you very much. And just before we finish and have a few questions to finish, I'd just like to play you something right up to date, which is one of the things that Jane mentioned at the beginning, is that I've recorded an album with a bass player and a drummer, and we do some things mixing jazz and Celtic music. So just to finish, I'd quite like to play you a jazzy one, if I may. And this is a piece that's composed by Californian harpist Deborah Henson Conant. And she's got bright blue hair and a blue harp, and she plays the blues. And this is her tune called New Blues. So I'll leave you with this one just to show you the whole range of what the harp can do. And then hopefully I might get to chat to some of you and have a couple of questions to finish. So unwaith eto, diolch yn fawr iawn am wrando, ac dyma ni, dyma'r un olaf. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Diolch yn fawr iawn i Jane Rickett-Hines am y gwahoddiad i ddod, ac i'r cynhadledd am gael fi yma fel adloniant heno. Thanks so much to Jane Rickett-Hines for the invitation to come, and above all, thank you so much to all of you for sitting here and listening to me this evening. So thank you, and thanks very much again for having me and for letting me be a part of it. Diolch o galon am y rando heno.
Well, diolch yn ddod. I have to say, it was a little bit mind-blowing to think that we were listening to a tune that probably Llywelyn and Lliw Olaf listened to, which is incredible. Just something. But well, diolch yn fawr I chi gyd am ddod, enwedig Harriet, Tom in his absence, but I'll thank him more officially tomorrow. Thank you all again, and hopefully see some of you bright and early tomorrow, ready for Adam yn yr Ardd yn y bore, 9:15, to learn about Adam and Ararth, who's been very good at retweeting. He's even made a little preview video, I see, explaining what he's going to talk about in the morning. So that's it. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr a nos da pawb.
Oh, diolch yn galon, nos da.